when power protects its own. The Epstein emails and what they reveal about access, silence, and complicity. A serious examination of newly released correspondence. The recently released emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, obtained through House Oversight Committee subpoena, present a disturbing portrait of how proximity to power functions in America. These communications span 15 years and involve convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, now serving 20 years for sex trafficking, and author Michael Wolff. What emerges is not a smoking gun of criminal participation, but something perhaps more insidious. A documentary trail of how wealthy, connected men navigate scandal, manipulate narratives, and calculate the political utility of silence. The April 2011 email, The Dog That Didn't Bark On. April 2011, Epstein wrote to Maxwell with notable satisfaction. I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Maxwell's response was terse. I have been thinking about that. The redacted name was later identified by GOP committee members as Virginia Giuffre, an Epstein trafficking survivor who wrote extensively about her experiences, but never accused Trump of wrongdoing. Giuffre died by suicide in April 2025. What makes this email significant is not what it alleges about Trump's behavior, but what it reveals about Epstein's mindset. He was keeping score. He was tracking who had been mentioned and who hadn't. He was calculating percentages of safety. This is the correspondence of a man managing a crisis through strategic silence and leverage. The satisfaction in his tone suggests he viewed certain people's discretion as transactional, a form of protection that could be counted, measured, and perhaps called upon. The January 2019 email, Mar-a-Lago and Memory. Nearly 8 years later, Epstein wrote to Michael Wolff with a different tone. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This email directly contradicts Trump's public narrative. Trump has repeatedly claimed he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago after learning about his behavior. Epstein's version, written in private correspondence with no apparent reason to lie, states he was never a member at all, and that Trump's knowledge of the girls was sufficient for him to ask Maxwell to stop. This raises critical questions. If Trump knew enough to ask Maxwell to intervene, what exactly did he know? When did he know it? And why, if his concern was genuine, did his action stop at asking an associate to stop rather than reporting suspected crimes to authorities? The White House has dismissed these emails as a hoax, proving nothing. But the emails don't need to prove criminality to prove something important. They document that people in Trump's orbit were aware of Epstein's predatory behavior and chose private management over public accountability. The December 2015 email. Crafting the narrative. Perhaps the most chilling exchange occurred in December 2015, as Trump campaigned for the Republican nomination. Michael Wolff warned Epstein that CNN planned to ask Trump about their relationship during a debate. Epstein responded, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Wolff's reply revealed a sophisticated understanding of political leverage. I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, and it really looks like he could win. You could save him, generating a debt. Read that again. This is a convicted sex offender's associate advising him to allow a presidential candidate to potentially lie on national television, specifically so that Epstein could later hang him with the truth and generate a debt. This is not the correspondence of innocent men. This is the language of leverage, manipulation, and calculated political power plays. Whether Trump knew about this conversation is irrelevant to what it reveals about how Epstein and his circle operated, treating truth as currency and public statements as investments in future influence. The post-inauguration emails. When the useful becomes dangerous after Trump took office, Epstein's tone shifted dramatically. The man he had once protected with silence became, in his private correspondence, a liability. In January 2017, he wrote to a New York Times reporter, "Donald is fucking crazy." By December 2018, his language grew more alarmed. To Larry Summers, borderline insane. To former Obama White House counsel Catherine Remler, "You might want to tell your Dem friends that treating Trump like a mafia don ignores the fact that he has great dangerous power. Not so with this maniac." What changed? Trump was no longer a real estate developer and reality TV star. He was the President of the United States, wielding federal law enforcement authority. The same power that had once made his silence valuable now made him, in Epstein's assessment, genuinely dangerous. This evolution tells us something crucial. Epstein's concerns were never about Trump's fitness for office or the good of the country. They were about Epstein's own vulnerability once Trump controlled the apparatus of federal prosecution. What we're left with: these emails do not prove Trump committed crimes related to Epstein's sex trafficking operation. Trump was neither a sender nor recipient of these communications, and Maxwell explicitly told the Deputy Attorney General that the president was never inappropriate with anybody. But absence of criminal evidence is not the same as absence of serious questions. What these emails do document. Multiple people in Trump's social circle knew about Epstein's predatory behavior toward young women. Epstein viewed Trump's public silence about him as strategically valuable. When asked about their relationship publicly, there was discussion of crafting an answer. Private communications suggest Trump knew enough to ask Maxwell to stop certain behavior. Epstein evolved from viewing Trump as an asset to viewing him as a dangerous threat once he gained presidential power. The broader pattern. This isn't really about Donald Trump. It's about a system where wealthy, connected men protect each other through mutually assured discretion. It's about how power insulates itself through careful management of what gets said publicly versus what everyone knows privately. Jeffrey Epstein trafficked and abused young women for decades before facing any consequences. He did this not in isolation, but within elite social circles in New York, Palm Beach, and internationally. The emails released by the House Oversight Committee show us one small window into how that system maintained itself, through calculated silence, strategic leverage, and the understanding that certain truths were more valuable left unsaid. Virginia Giuffre spent years trying to hold Epstein's enablers accountable. She wrote a book about her experience. She testified. She sued. And according to these emails, she spent hours at Epstein's home with various people who never once mentioned her publicly, and Epstein tracked that silence with satisfaction. She died by suicide earlier this year. The system she tried to expose continues largely unchanged. The question we should be asking. The question isn't whether these emails prove Donald Trump committed crimes. The question is why our standard for accountability has become so low that "didn't commit crimes" is considered an adequate response to documented evidence of knowing about predatory behavior and choosing discretion over reporting. The question is why wealth and social connections so consistently insulate men from even having to answer basic questions about what they knew and when they knew it. The question is how many Virginia Giuffres have to die before we decide that protecting reputations is less important than protecting young people. These emails are not a hoax. They are authentic correspondence, properly obtained through congressional subpoena. What they prove is exactly what survivors have been saying all along. The people who could have stopped Epstein knew, and they chose not to act. That's not a criminal conspiracy. It's something potentially worse. It's how power protects itself in plain sight, through the simple expedient of looking away while assuring everyone else they saw nothing at all.